Good morning. I always say good morning, but you could be listening to this at any time of the day. So, hello. Hi, beautiful coven. How are you doing? It's me, Jody Ann, modern witch, spiritual teacher, and card slinger extraordinaire. I'm sharing my morning coffee with you, and I want to talk to you about spell crafting, like actually creating your own spell. And I want to focus not just on that today, but I want to get into what it takes to craft a spell and what you need to be able to make a spell from scratch, produce the actual results you want, make something tangible in this world for you so that you can have the most amazing life. Just in case you're new here, I'd like to introduce myself to you because all of you in the Ear Bud Coven have been sharing this podcast. You've been reviewing it, you've been liking it and downloading it, and that has made us more visible and really helped grow. I want to say thank you. And I want to welcome all of you who are new in the Ear Bud Coven. I'm going to tell you just a little bit about myself. I'm Jody Ann. I've got more than 20 years experience sitting across the table from people reading their cards, coaching them spiritually. I teach tarot. I teach witchcraft. I practice as a witch in my life. I really believe that the life I have and the abundance I have is because of the way I live and how I manifest and spell work that I do. You can follow the podcast on Instagram under the Witching Half Hour or So. We have a Facebook group, the Witching Half Hour or So Ear Bud Coven, where you can connect and talk and chat about all the things that we talk about here. I love continuing the conversation with you. If you are interested in working with me, my website is jodyann.psychicmedium.com. That's where you'll find my current offerings, how to book a reading with me, and a link to sign up to my love letter that comes out almost monthly. It's a low volume, high consent newsletter, so I don't market to you without your permission. Today's topic of how to craft a spell came up because I was talking with a dear friend of mine about a spell I had created recently. I was sharing what crystals I was using and why, what oils I was using and why, the different correspondences and how they related to the work I was doing. And I thought, I bet my coven would like this information. This is really good information. And you should know, coven, that I didn't start spell work by crafting my own spells. I really think it's a nuanced art. It's kind of like cooking, right? You need to learn the fundamentals before you can substitute and then create your own recipes. I feel like spell work is very similar to that. There's a foundational amount of information you need in order to create something that will work well. We need an understanding of correspondences. I don't really know how to define this for you except to say that there is a connection between things on our tangible world and things in the spiritual realm. So colors are associated with specific energies. Gemstones are associated and correspond to specific energies. Gods and goddesses have faces to them that correspond with specific work that you want to do. And you don't have to memorize this stuff. There is so much out there. You can Google it. I don't always trust Google though. You know me. I don't always trust Google. There's so much information out there. You want to really know your source. There are great spell works from old, traditionally trained witches and practitioners that will give you good correspondences. Scott Cunningham is a great place to start. The Llewellyn Big Book of Correspondences, that's one of the ones I go to. I also have different books on crystals and herb lore that I cross-reference my correspondences. And I can hear you all out there that you want to be guided by your intuition. I get that. I super get that. And that is what part of this is about, right? pulling from the collective conscience, pulling from our intuition, being led by our hearts in our spell work. However, if you choose a wrong correspondence, you are not going to get the spell result that you are seeking. Want to know how I know this? Years ago, so many years ago, I was doing some spell work for a friend of mine who lived down the hall. This is years ago when I still did spells for love. I don't do those kind of spells anymore. That's another topic. Okay, so I was doing a spell for her to help rejuvenate the love and passion in her relationship. Well, she didn't know her fellow's actual astrology. She gave me the wrong astrology. So the candle color I assigned to him was all wrong. It was not the right color. It did not correspond to his astrological sign, and it didn't matter. The candle was anointed properly. Everything else was super cool, but that one color was off. So even though it was a spell for her and him, because that piece was off, there was so much chaos in their relationship for like 3 months. They survived it. I did work to undo the spell and correct it, but it was such a mess. So please, my loves, check your correspondences. It's very, very important when you're building and crafting a spell that you're using a reputable source to figure out your correspondences. Just think of it like cooking. You can substitute Italian herbs for Italian herbs. You can substitute Cajun spices for other Cajun spices. But if you put oregano in a Cajun dish, it's not going to taste good. It's just going to feel off. So not only do you want to make sure your correspondences are correct, you want to make sure that what you're using blends well together. And honestly, my loves, I think you should start with pre-made spells. If you're new to spell work, start with pre-made spells. There's tons of them, and start small. Start with little things. There's so many witches I know that have been doing a bit of manifestation work, a bit of moon release work, a bit of like ritual for the 8 Sabbats, and then they want to do the biggest, most craziest spell, and it goes berserk, and they wonder why. We need to walk before we run. That's why the workshops I offer are often new moon manifestations. We focus on one thing, one small change we want to make in our life, and we work together to create that. We work together on that manifestation. I always encourage everyone to think of something very specific that they can measure. I don't want you to grab something abstract like overall life satisfaction. That's so hard to measure. But if you want to manifest, let's say, a better project at work, increasing your client list by 5 or 10-fold, these are things you can measure. These are things you can keep track of and see whether or not your manifestation materialized on this plane. One of the tricky parts about spellcraft is we need to believe that what we're doing works. You can light as many candles you want, and you can say whatever incantation you say and whatever rhyming sequence you rhyme. If you, at the core of your soul, think it is BS, you will manifest nothing. In order to grow that trust in your ability to move and shake the world, to trust your innate magical ability to create the life you want, because you were born to do this, baby. You beat with the drum of creation. Your heartbeat is like the life force of Gaia. You can change and shape your life, but you have to believe that you can do it. So to have that rock solid belief in your ability to pull the strings of fate to your favor, you need to start with small, measurable, tangible things. And it's okay to go and buy the Starhawk books. She has really great spells in there. Go ahead and buy some of the old school Wiccan books. that are incantations made for you. Scott Cunningham's Book of Shadows has a ton of ritual work in it, all kinds of recipes, all kinds of things that his coven used for years. And it's only after his death that they came together and published it. Those words, those recipes have already been tried and true. So you can use them to build your confidence in your spell casting. You can use them as stepping stones to original crafted spells. Most of the time now, I always use original crafted spells, but I've been on this crooked winding spiral path for a long time, my love. So I'm pulling from tools and tricks I've used for years and years. When I first started on this path, all the spells I used were pre-crafted, either taught to me by my teacher or taken straight out of a book. And most of the things I did were high Sabbath rituals of celebration. I wasn't even doing the kind of spell work I do now to change and shape my life and to morph it into something that brings me deep satisfaction and joy. I wasn't doing spell work for healing either. Like ritual healing wasn't even on my radar. I was quite young when I started, so it was all about goddess worship, ritual, reclaiming this pagan path and finding my identity. Once you're producing result with a pre-crafted spell, then you can move into adjusting it, substituting in one thing for another. If you feel like you've been doing crafted spells or guided spells for quite some time and you're ready to dive into creating your own spells, I suggest going through the spells you've already been casting that are out of a beautiful book or out of a book of shadows and look for which ones you like. What are the aspects of a pre-crafted spell that you love? Are you really drawn to sigil style magic? Are you really drawn to candle style magic? Do you like making witch jars? What is it that you really enjoy? And start working with your intuition and your goddesses and guides on crafting a spell in the form that you enjoy casting them. When I'm faced with the problem that I'm going to use spell work on, I know it's percolating in my mind for a few days before I do ritual. So I let that creative process happen. I think about what style of spell I want to cast. I actually have started crafting the spell itself in the circle I've cast. So I'm ready for ritual. My altar space has a lot of spell casting supplies tucked into little drawers of my altar cabinet. So I have everything I need or could need at my fingertips. So I will cast my circle and start preparing my spell. I'll open up and use my intuition as a guide. So I will know ahead of time if I'm doing sigil magic or candle magic, or if I'm writing and burning and releasing. Whatever it is I'm doing, I'll have a rough plan. I allow the goddess I'm working with to guide the actual spell work. Typically, for the theme, I've done the homework ahead of time. The spell I cast this week that inspired this topic and this episode, I was casting a spell where I needed to have a business deal go my way. I needed to have a confrontation I was terrified of having, so I needed confidence, I needed powerfulness, the business deal to sway in my favor. I was facing a corporation that I needed to step up and take responsibility for their error. So I already knew that I needed abundance and business sense as a theme. So I was looking through my correspondence book and I came up with some of the ingredients I knew I was going to use. Jasmine, because it signifies wealth and abundance. So does cinnamon. I used candle colors that associated with abundance and business success. And I put that all together and I created this spell. The actual incantations I used were inspired in the moment, in the circle, with the gods and goddesses I pulled forward to assist me with the work. When I was talking about making sure you ask for specific things so that you can measure your spell's outcome, this is what I mean. I know exactly what I'm intending. I know what situation I need to fall into my favor. So at the end of this process and this chapter with this corporation, I can look at whether or not my spell work was successful. Did it tip things in my favor? Did they go over and above what they needed to do? Was it an easy process or a difficult process? What kind of obstacles were removed for me so that I could get a good outcome? These are the things we can actually measure in our spell work. I keep a book of shadows. I'm sure I've talked about those on the podcast before. I encourage you to keep a book of shadows. Record the spell work you're doing. Record what you're asking for, and then follow up after the situation has passed and see where you can tell that your spell work was effective. How did you feel? The spell I was casting, I needed to feel confident and sure of myself, and I needed to be brave to do this confrontation. And I can tell you that I did. I did feel like I was standing in truth when I was talking to them. I did feel like I had all my ducks in a row, and I presented myself really well. So these are things that we can measure. Even though feelings are intangible, we can measure them. We can see where doing the spell work has shifted the dialogue inside our heads. That's one of the things we can measure when it comes to release work and healing work. We can have a journal and we can take stock of what our internal monologue looked like before the healing work we've done, and then go back and take stock like 6 months later and go, okay, I've done release work every full moon on whatever issue it is we're trying to release. How has my internal monologue changed? Because I do ritual-based healing work, sometimes the spell work I'm doing isn't tangible. It's about healing. It's about those deep wounds. So I use the same tools of tracking that I learned in therapy to track cognitive behavioral therapy to track my spell work. So when I'm doing releasing work, I can check back and see, has my internal monologue changed? Has this wound started to heal? What has shifted for me after working on something for 3 or 6 months of release and manifestation work? So I offer that to you as a tool. Track what you're doing. That's how we build the confidence in our spell work. We look at the results of it, and then we adjust and move forward. Once we know how effective our spell work is, we can adjust it the next time. We can grow as a witch. We can grow as a practitioner. We can learn what methods work well for us. Does that make sense to you, my love? And I can hear my guides reminding me to tell you something. One of the other things is keep the work simple. Manifest or work on or spellcraft one theme at a time, one piece at a time. When we add too many concepts into a spell, our energy isn't as focused. The intention we build, the magic we build, the work becomes diluted. It becomes unfocused when we have too many things we're trying to manifest at once. Break it down. Start with one aspect, start with one area, start with one thing. I don't know how I can explain this. Why don't I give you an example? Let's say, for example, you're unhappy at work because your boss or coworker is super terrible and mean and toxic. One of the things you could do is spell work of protection, right? You can build protection. You can have an energetic shield that you build between you and that person. Then you can do some manifestation work on your own boundaries and empowerment. Then you can do some work on bringing opportunities to you so you don't have to work directly with that person. right? You can build on your spell work piece by piece by piece, one small ritual at a time, instead of doing a big ritual of protection and boundaries and manifesting a new job, because that's so much stuff. In order for these things to materialize in our life, there's a lot of little cogs and a lot of little things that need to move. We have the power to change it. You get better results, I've found anyway. You get better results if you do them one piece at a time with really good correspondences, really solid built spells. Does that make sense? I think that's all I have to say. I think I've covered everything I wanted to talk about today. I hope that this helps bring you confidence in your spell work. If you've never cast a spell, I hope this gives you the courage to grab that book off your shelf and try just one small spell to see how that magic ripples through your life, what you can transform and manifest this summer. We just passed Beltane. We're into this really beautiful, fertile ground, this real energetic time of the year. Tap into that, my love. See what you can change and shift so that you can grow the best life you can. Thank you so much for joining me today, for spending this time with me and learning about spellcasting. Drop me a line on any of the socials. Tell me some of your tricks. Tell me what you like to do. Let's get a conversation going. As always, you can reach out through my website if you want to work with me, jodiannpsychicmedium.com. I will be back in your earbuds on the next moon. This podcast comes out every new moon and every full moon. Give or take a day or two. Thank you so much. Blessed be.